In this video, I'm using the integumentary system to show you the tissues in the body. And let's look at this slide here. So here is the skin in its entirety. And this is just showing you the epithelium, which in the case of skin is also known as epidermis. So let's look at what all we see here. So this is the epithelium, which you know in skin is stratified, squamous, keratinized epithelium. So that's why you can see if you go from here, so this would be where the basement membrane is. So this is where the basement membrane is. And these cells here, if you notice, there are no nuclei present. So this is where the cells are keratinized or dead. This part here is known as the dermis, and this dermis contains connective tissue, which is both dense, irregular connective tissue, and you also have below the dermis, you also have this part here, which is adipose tissue, which is loose connective tissue. So you can see you have two types of connective tissue in skin. You also have smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is seen in the form of one set, which is known as the erector pylorum muscle. This is the erector pylorum muscle seen here. Here's another one. This muscle is responsible for making your hair stand up erect, and it also helps to squeeze some glands which are present here, and we'll see them later. So you have smooth muscle in erector pylorum, and you also have smooth muscle in all these blood vessels which are seen here. So therefore you see muscle tissue also, and both these erector pylorum and blood vessels are supplied by the sympathetic nervous system. And then you have nervous tissue because you have these nerve endings present here. So you can see you have all the four types of tissues present in skin. Let's look at the histological picture here now, and what we are doing here is we are going to compare thin skin. The top image is that of thin skin, where the layer of keratin is much thinner, compared to this image, which is that of thick skin, which is seen only in your palms and soles. So in thin skin, again, if we start, this is the basement membrane, and going up, this is the layer of keratin that we see, which is much thinner. Here, again, this is the basement membrane. So here, all these cells have nuclei. When you go up here, these don't have nuclei. So this is where keratin is present. And what you also see is just next to the basement membrane, the first layer has dark brown or blackish you can see it's stained there as dark brown or black, and that is those are melanin granules which are produced by cells called melanocytes. And so if we go back to the epidermis here and look at them, so here you can see here, as I showed you earlier, this was the basement membrane, and the first layer of cells which sits on the basement membrane, amongst those cells you have these special cells called melanocytes which secrete melanin granules, which gives the color to the skin. When someone gets tanned, the amount of melanin produced by these melanocytes is more, so the skin gets darker. What you also see in the epidermis, since this is a good time to know that the epidermis may contain special cells, is another cell that you see which is known as Langerhans cells, and these cells are phagocytic and take part in the immune response. So they take part in the immune response. And then lastly, you have another cell here which is called Merkel cell, which is a pressure receptor. So these are special cells seen in the epithelium or the epidermis of the skin. So let's go back here to this slide. So those, when you look at it histologically, you cannot make out the melanocytes as clearly as was seen in that diagram. But what you do see is this dark pigment present here in the basal layer, and that is melanin granules which are produced by those melanocytes. Now here in this part here, you can see dense, irregular connective tissue. You can see these collagen bundles. It's a little small, the image, but you can see the collagen bundles are kind of in a haphazard fashion, as we saw in the tissues video. Not so clear. It's a little too light over here, but this is dense, irregular connective tissue, which is seen in the dermis. And then let's see what else we see in skin. If you remember, when you do tissues, we talk of glands, and these are what are called exocrine glands. And exocrine glands are formed from the epithelium. So if this is the epithelium actually sends in a tube, and this kind of enlarges and becomes flask shaped or a different shape. It can be, maybe like this. So this is the glandular portion, and this is the duct. So here what you're looking at are the sweat glands. So these are all the sweat glands. Those are cut sections of the sweat glands seen in this dense irregular connective tissue. So you can see the dense irregular connective tissue. You can also see over here, you can also see adipose tissue. So right here you can see this adipose tissue, which is very, very lightly staining, empty looking cells, chicken wire appearance. And these are the ducts of the sweat glands, and you can see some of them up here. So it's a section of cut ducts and the glandular tissue. And in this lower image, you see another type of gland seen in the skin, which is called sebaceous gland. And these are the sebaceous glands, which are also known as holocrine glands. And very close to the sebaceous gland is that erector pylorum muscle. So this is pointing to that erector pylorum muscle, and you can see this muscle lies in the angle between the surface there and this gland. So when it contracts, what it does is it kind of squeezes this sebaceous gland, and it pours its secretion. And this here is a hair follicle, which is only seen in thin skin. So it squeezes it into the hair follicle, and it helps to lubricate the hair follicle. So you can see here how we can use the integumentary system to look at all the tissues of the body.